My mom was a great mom, and I learned a lot from her. One of the greatest gifts she gave me, though, was dying at an early age from me. Because it kind of gave me this outlook in life like, well, shit, I'm going to work hard, but I'm going to work hard at the stuff I want to work hard at and not what I think I should be doing. I'm going to do whatever the hell I enjoy doing.
So when you go home tomorrow?
Yeah. No, LA. I'm splitting now. I'm paying rent in LA and Atlanta.
Why Atlanta?
Because I started there. I have a dog there that I can't leave my dog.
You can just take your dog wherever you live.
No, he lives with my boyfriend because I'm gone all the time.
Right.
I'm sorry. Also a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I just say dog?
Not worth mentioning. That's not what's tying you to Atlanta in any way.
I'm so sorry. My dog and my boyfriend.
Dog and some guy that's also there.
He has a caretaker that I appreciate sometimes. I'm sorry. I have a dog, a hot tub, and also my boyfriend there.
Well, I think I've seen both of them.
Oh, yeah, you have.
Yes.
Oh, we had our dog with us.
Yes.
Yeah, we got kicked out of the beach in Miramar.
Yeah, you can't have a dog. We brought our dog to the beach there before, and like some person pulls up on a truck like almost immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Except for when you're at the beach and someone else has their annoying dog. Then, of course, there's no enforcement whatsoever.
No, nobody hears. I just go, I think the beach is like, that's God's land. Can we, or whatever, do you know what I mean? Like, you can let a creature, if you have a creature, you can bring it on the beach with you.
Have you been to the dog beach in Huntington Beach?
No.
There's a dog beach, and then you're like, oh, this is amazing, but you're also like, this is why they don't allow dogs.
Because it's...
Well, it's just, if everyone, it's like when you're flying and one person has a dog, you're like, this is amazing, a dog. But if everyone had a dog on a plane, you'd be like, this is a nightmare.
I disagree. I would rather be on a plane full of dogs and no humans.
Full of dogs barking at each other. I don't think anyone knows what that would be like. It would be terrible.
Yeah. I'm the person that, really lets my dog walk up and sniff people and they're terrified. And
Are you one of those people that has the fake like comfort animal?
Yes, I would. If my dog didn't bark at anyone that looked him in the eyes, he would come everywhere with me.
No, I saw you, your boyfriend, and your dog on the beach in Florida, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's that person.
Yeah.
But I'm never sure. I wish I was someone who was just like, if I saw someone that I thought I recognized, I was like, oh, that's you. Or even if it's like people I'm like, I think I went to high school with that person, or I think we met before. I'm definitely like, I'll email them later to be sure. That's
so nice. I just Google and go, yep.
But do you go up to them? Or you just like, now I know?
No, I don't go up to them because I don't trust my own mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't have whatever the extrovert gene of like, I deserve to talk to this person.
Yeah.
I will tell them whatever I'm thinking. I'm like, nah, I could be wrong, and that would be weird.
Yeah. Oh, I have very much that where even if I'm in the green room with somebody who is a legend, somebody walks in, or somebody that you have been following or you're a huge fan of for years, I have such a fear of turning into a fan that I'll like shut down. And I mean, like the first time I met Jeff Foxworthy, we're in a tiny green room together, and I'm just kind of like have my arms crossed, and I'm like, "What's up? Hey, how are you?"
Yeah.
I'm so afraid of turning into what everyone else is, that I do the opposite. And it probably turns them off.
And I also think if you're someone who like, if you have like a process, like a headspace that you're trying to get into, I'm always very hesitant to like interrupt that. Like you never actually mind, but then I think you're sort of like, well, if they mind, I don't want to be that person. So I was always like, I was at like a 90% and then then I went to look and I was like, wait, she follows me? That's crazy.
Oh my God.
What are the chances?
You know who I found you through is Nikki Glazer.
Really?
Isn't that funny?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I didn't know she follows me.
Oh,
but she's amazing.
Yeah, she's reposted some of your stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is very funny.
I know.
I would not have guessed that.
I know. Yeah, she's great. She's a great like repost or share of different mediums.
I've seen her post your stuff.
Oh yeah. She's not. I mean, but she'll post comics, but then she'll post. She's I love finding new cartoon artists.
Yeah.
Through her, but she's great. I mean,
I think that's hard. Like, if you're someone who has a platform, like, obviously you're building the platform for you. Mm-hmm. So, like, people I think are reluctant to like share other stuff. But weirdly, like, I found at the beginning of my career, I was like, okay, I want to be an author, and I want people to buy books from me. But why would anyone follow me before I've done that thing? And so, like, I started my career just recommending books to people. Mm-hmm. And then people were like, oh, he has pretty good taste.
Yeah.
And then they ended up liking me. And so it's somewhat counterintuitive, but like actually being generous and like championing other people's work is like a really good strategy.
Huge. In comedy world, what I've learned is building your own audience is huge, but that helps you sell your own tickets. But the like next level of, getting being on a panel on somebody's show.
Yeah.
Or like podcast helps or guests, blah, 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 all that else. That is totally word of mouth via comedians.
Yes.
Only. And like people who are champions of other comedians, it only helps, like Bert Kreischer.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Like they are like, they're huge champions of other comedians and like, but you bring them on the road or promoting whoever's opening for them or blah, 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 blah. And, I mean, if anything, it's as selfish as you can be. It ends up helping you.
Yes, especially if that stuff's really good. People, like someone once pointed out to me, like if you introduce two people to each other, like one well-known person and you're like, who you should meet, and you connect them with another well-known person, you elevate to that level, which I never thought about. So when you introduce people, or let's say more, I think relatably, if you introduce two people and then those people fall in love and say get married.
Yeah.
Now you have a very close friendship with those two people because they have a close friendship. Right. Even if you were just like acquaintances, like you didn't spend that much time together, but you created a bond between two people.
Yeah.
Now the three of you have an intense, like sort of, not even indebtedness, but you have this connection that they share with no one else because you're the only one that introduced them.
Yeah.
And so like when you champion someone else's work and then someone likes that work. So like if I 10 years ago recommended a book to someone and that book changed their life, I changed that person's life a little bit by being involved in that process.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And like it's like, this is not going to make sense when I say this, but you're the 2 in the H2O.
Sure. Yes.
I know that's not how it is.
No, whatever.
Is how my brain works.
Isn't that how elements work? There's like the binding things.
I don't know what it is.
Who knows?
In my head, there's there's a circle here and a line, and then 2 other circles. But you're the line.
Sure.
The circles aren't there without the line.
I don't know enough chemistry to dispute this, but that sounds correct.
Okay, this is why I enjoy you, though, and this is a compliment when I say this. For a long time, I still am a big fan of Tim Ferriss. Mm-hmm. And
I met Tim at that South by Southwest.
Really?
Yes. He invested in Twitter. I thought it was a stupid idea, and that's where our paths diverged.
Yeah. You're both doing great. But I think, like, I was trying to read Seneca from listening to him, and I'll just say it. I think I have a lot of spirit with a simple mind.
Sure.
And what I enjoy about you and reading your books, though, is you kind of relay it in a more relatable, in a very relatable way to somebody who is sometimes this. When I was trying to read Seneca, I wasn't retaining an hour of what I read.
Well, it's funny because sometimes people be like when you see like the people that don't like your work, they're always like the loudest people. They'll
right?
Like, why would
you? They're the loudest.
Yeah,
is comedy like you could be killing in a room and all you see is the one man with the frown on his face?
Well, and the people who are like, that was pretty good. No one writes that comment. It's usually like, I fucking hate this person or I'm obsessed with this person. You don't really like either of neither of those are people you want to spend that much time with. But like, they'll be like, well, I don't get why anyone would read Ryan's work. Like, just read the originals. And I go, sure, that's what you should do. But you're not everyone. Like and I'm not saying that everyone can't do it because I actually think that they can't. But a lot of people need something between vague interest and 2,000-year-old classic texts that were written in Greek or Latin, right? Like it's preposterous to think that that's where most people should start with anything.
Yes. And it's like what I related to is like I grew up Catholic or whatever. You would go to Bible school as a little kid. You're not reading straight from the Bible and breaking it down. You're going and they're teaching you, like stories, like in a childlike form. And then you remember those stories and then later you read it in the Bible and it's much more theatrical.
You get the names and the places, you vaguely understand the lesson of the story, then you can read it as an adult.
Yes.
Were you like Catholic or just like kind of Catholic?
Oh, when we were talking about high school, I went to all-girls Catholic high school. And then when people say elementary school, middle school, I have no idea what they're talking about.
I went just in Catholic school.
I went to grade school. It was kindergarten through 8th grade was, you went to the school that was the parish that you belonged to.
Yeah.
And then you went to the same-sex Catholic high school. And then I ran away.
I grew up Catholic, or at least I thought I was Catholic.
Yeah.
And then we moved across town when I went to high school, and we just weren't Catholic anymore. And then I realized we were like proximity Catholic.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So then I hear people, they were like, they're Catholic. I'm like, I mean, I did all this stuff, but like we clearly weren't that Catholic, because if a 20-minute drive, eliminates your Catholicism, you were not really Catholic.
For sure. I think it's still dwindling
yeah.
I hear about my grandpa's stories about how he went to church every morning at 6 a.m. before he would go to work, and my uncle was there. They were all altar boys, and one time my uncle's doing the incense and of course passes out, and my grandpa he gets a lashing for passing out from the incense, making him pass out, and to our days now, it's just, it was. I think every generation gets a little bit more with it.
Well, right where we bumped into each other, because I pass it all the time when we're down there, there is a Latin Mass Catholic church, like right across, like right at the end of that boardwalk. There's a Latin, and I'm always like, that would actually be interesting. I wouldn't know what was happening, but I would definitely like to go to that at least once. But then I'm like, Sunday.
Right. There's so many other ways to get your fix without sitting in a stiff pew that I think people learn. I don't follow Catholicism at all anymore. I do find comfort in going sometimes and just sitting in Mass and hearing I like the choir and something else, like in a real cathedral.
Well, yes, especially like not in America, or in New Orleans would be the only city that you get that sensation where you're like, oh, this is a thing. I am participating in a ritual that's like my Catholic church growing up was in a tent. Because they were like building the church, so it was like one of those permanent tents, like that football teams practice in the summer, like one of those ones. Yes. So like there was none of that, right? This was like it felt like a high school gym. But then you go into like any church that's, let's say, more than 200 years old. You're like, okay, like thousands of people have sat in this exact spot and heard the exact same hymns and chants. And you're like, even if you don't believe in it, you're like, there's something kind of sacred about this process.
Very much. Yeah. It's a comforting thing. I don't know what it is. Yeah. I like, even if you resist everything about it.
Well, I was in Budapest, like right before the pandemic, which is actually where Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations. And I was like walking back to my hotel and I saw this sign for like a concert in like a cathedral.
Yeah.
And I went, which I would like never normally do, but I was by myself. And so it was like a choir singing for like an hour and a half or whatever in this church. And then it totally changed even my understanding of the architecture, because you're like, oh, this is what this was designed for. Like the way the acoustics of the acoustics of the building, because there weren't microphones when this was built. Like, and you're just like, oh, this is like a whole other level of the experience that if I was a peasant in 1600, and obviously all the breakthroughs we've had in science since, and then, the church hadn't been systematically molesting boys for, all the other things that we know now was not there.
If you didn't know that, and there was just an organ.
This would have you would have been like, this is it. This is the height of the human experience right here.
Yeah. There was, now, at 16, you hear EDM for the first time, and you're like, wait a minute, DJ Tiesto's got something.
Yes. No, you realize there's other ways to get that thing.
Yes.
And probably part of what religion is struggling with is that they were the only game in town for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Because they banned all the other games.
Yep.
But now it's a little, there's different ways to scratch that itch. Some good, some not so good.
Yeah, for sure. And you go through phases. What I've always said, though, is what I really enjoyed about my high school, though, was that it was an all-girls Catholic high school, but like it wasn't strict in that, like, we had feminine spirituality, and my teacher taught about women from the Bible, but she taught it in a way that was like, here's why you don't hear about a lot of women in the Bible.
Why was that?
Or, it was a lot. She would go back in time and be like, back before it was, before it was taught monogamous relationships, women actually, before the patriarchy, and I'm going to say this in a very vague way.
Okay.
But I remember, but before there was a quote unquote patriarchy, women really were seen as more powerful because, right, they could breed children. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, it eventually turned into they started practicing monogamy and monogamous relationships so that one man could hold control over one woman, breed enough children to tend the land, right? And the farms and whatever else. So I don't think that would have been taught in a normal Catholic tradition.
Sure.
But it was cool to kind of like my school was kind of more you weren't the popular kid because you were the pretty girl that the boys enjoyed. You if you were the fun, loud, or smart or interesting person, you were more maybe treasured.
Wow. That's cool. That's untraditional.
I loved same-sex school. I just thought it was, I think it encouraged you to be more yourself than the traditional high school. And I think things could be taught and said, or it was
would eliminate certain distractions and competitions and sources of conflict, I imagine.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. It was, I mean, I'm like, I not every school, but I'm like, if I had kids one day, I would be so open to putting them in same sex, what I'm supposed to be saying now. I don't, I'm going to go same sex.
I was picking my oldest up from school. He was like maybe 5. And we passed these Mennonites. There's like a Mennonite community out here. And they had like a garage sale. Yeah. I was like, this seems interesting. So we pulled over and he was like, I want that like fire truck. So I was like, you stay in the car. I rolled down the window. I went to get the fire truck, getting the fire truck. They were like getting me something. I forget what it was. And so I was like, oh, are you guys like Mennonite? Like just shoot,
What is Mennonite?
Mennonite is like Amish, but a little bit more, like they don't drive around in horse and buggies, but they wear like the bonnets and dresses. It's like a very traditional sort of like Orthodox religion, right? Where you're like, oh, they're living in a closed, like insular society that is not absorbed all the sort of mainstream dress, whatever. Yeah. So I'm just, asking them about it. I'm like, are you Mennonite? Like, obviously they're Mennonite. And they were like telling me, and I said, oh, is your like church around here? I've never actually like seen the church. And they're like, yeah, it's right down the street. And they sort of mistook this for serious interest in me like wanting to explore Mennonite religion. And they were like, you should definitely come sometime. You can like come whenever you want, And I was like, yeah, sure, maybe I will, And my son heard this and he was like, Dad, no, don't. and I was like, shh, like Clark, like it's good. Good. He's like, no. Church is boring, And I was like, at first I was mortified, but then I was just like, how do you know this? I've literally never taken you. You've never been. And somehow you just instinctively picked up that kids hate going to church.
Yeah.
And he's like, church is boring.
How did he know?
I don't know. It's a mystery, but yeah. And then we were like talking about God after, and he's like, God's not real. And I was like, well, some people think he's real, and they think he created the universe. And he was like, no, that's not how it happened. And I was like, how did it happen? He was like, the Earth collided with the sun. Just some, which was like, equally absurd, but it was at least in the ballpark of the scientific explanation of the universe. And I was like, where did you get any of this?
Yeah.
Because it's not from me. Like, I've deliberately not talked to you about it. And what YouTube video did you watch where you decided church is boring and you don't want to go? So it was quite an experience.
Well, also, was church is boring and this is how the earth was created? Was that in the same 5-minute video?
Yes. Yeah, probably. Probably Mr. Beast talked about it or something.
Yeah. Wait, do you purposely not talk about creation and whatnot else just so they can form their own opinions?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was baggage that I had to shed off as I got older, so I went to college and then I read like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harrison. And I was like, oh, okay, there's more complicated than some of these sort of simplistic, intelligent, not even simplistic, but simplistic would be like God created the universe. But that I don't even think is what religious people advance for the most part. Now it's like these sort of like, well, what about this? They kind of like overwhelm young people's minds with, if you heard like the argument for the watchmaker, like if you found a watch on the side of the road and you looked at it, could you believe that this was created by sheer accident, or would you have believed there's a watchmaker, right? Yeah. Right? Like the idea that evolution is it's impossible for evolution to create complexity.
Yeah.
So you hear things like that, and then you have to kind of unlearn those things as you get older. So like our thinking was, we're not going to indoctrinate them with anything. Either way, it just is like not something we really have to talk about.
Yeah.
And then so for him to come with like, church is boring, I don't want to go, also God is not real. You're like, wow, okay, maybe we should have had the conversations. I don't know.
I mean,
it's also hilarious.
Yeah. It's honestly pretty, like he's starting at zero. You know what I mean? He's not starting with some very specific belief.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty base level.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting and what I'm learning more is the agenda behind the origins of religions.
What do you mean?
Which is so like where religion started, like region wise, who was in control at the time, and what did that society need?
Sure.
And I think the religion starts to form around that, and what needs to be controlled in order for certain powers to rise.
Well, what I think is interesting, like you were talking about Seneca being somewhat difficult to get into, but like, so Seneca and Jesus, if you believe Jesus was a real historical figure, which I do, because we hear about them both from Tacitus, the Roman historian. Like there's, I think there's enough historical evidence that you could go, he actually existed.
But was he just a man? Was he?
Sure. That's a secondary argument, but that he did exist, right?
Right.
He and Seneca are born roughly the same time.
Yeah.
They both are born in provinces of the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
They both become very popular philosophers in their own time. But it's like when you read Seneca, Seneca's like saying what he means, like talking about actual real life things. And then, you read the Bible and you're like, what? How did this, like this sort of, the parables I think are interesting, but how did this like contradictory, confusing, like mystical text become more or less the dominant text of Western philosophy? Whereas like this guy who's talking about making money and having children and being happy and being a good like just coming out and saying what he means in like plain English, although not literally English. Right. You're like, where did this road diverge and why? And who did it suit to go for the less accessible, the text demanding the most interpretation? Who did it suit that we went that way?
Do you think it's because people who, wanted to just be happy and serve themselves as much as other people wasn't as beneficial.
I'm probably going to get myself in trouble here, but here's what I actually think happened is that in the Roman world, there were all sorts of cults, right?
Yeah.
And not in the modern sense of the word cult, but like, okay, Hadrian, the emperor who selects Marcus Aurelius to be emperor, he had this male lover named Antonius, I'm forgetting his name, but he like died, right? Tragically at like 20 years old, he drowned himself. And so Hadrian creates a cult in his honor. He basically like gloms him on to the Egyptian cult of Osiris. They build temples to him in every city they go. People worship him to curry favor with the emperor. But for like hundreds of years later, this cult is like still an existing cult, and at one point rivals Christianity in terms of its size.
Wow.
I think a big chunk of it is like it was a cult like the others, and it just historical happenstance, it's the one that's stuck.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think there's an interesting, society makes a choice between sort of philosophy and religion. And I don't want to say that's the wrong choice. I would just say that was a problematic choice because philosophy, I think, serves people and society better than a religion, which you believe is the one true religion, which you have to then evangelize, which then people who are not believers in that religion are infidels, and you have to curry favor with this mystical being. I think that was a big historical what if, is if like Stoicism is the dominant sort of guide to living versus religion. What does history look like?
Right. It was almost like religion creates blind followers.
Yes. And so when I'm like, who does it serve? Like, obviously the people who are heading that thing have a reason to go like, well, here's the thing. You don't understand how the Bible works. So let me tell, it actually serves a purpose that it can be interpreted 1,000 ways as opposed to,
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, there's a line from Hillel where someone asked him to explain, like, the Old Testament or the Bible on one foot, and he says, love thy neighbor as thyself, all the rest is commentary. If that was actually the Christianity that passed down, we would live in a very different world. But instead, it was deliberately opaque and complicated, and then, especially in Catholicism, there's all these layers of bosses and,
cardinals and archbishops and
Yes.
I mean, it's interesting. I think when you just go, maybe they weren't necessarily. Well, I'll just say it. Maybe they really didn't give a hoot so much about heterosexuality versus homosexuality, but it was now we need to create followers.
Yeah.
How do we create the family structure that creates the children who then also become followers and da 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 da.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, and it's not. I just think it's interesting to also understand.
Yeah. Sometimes people, if I post something that's like, even remotely like sort of pro gay rights or trans rights, or people go, "What do you think Marcus Aurelius would have thought of this?" And go, I don't think you want to know what the Greeks and Romans were doing, dude.
Right.
They're not your friends here.
Right. They were all, right? It was like very much, they all had lovers of different sexes, right?
This is a very weird riff that I was thinking about the other day, speaking of which, okay, so like, obviously now, most people are heterosexual and a minority of people are not, right? Or more fluid, let's say, right?
From what they're telling themselves.
Yes. But like, if let's say you go back 50 years where we're much less accepting, you're a gay person and you're forced into a straight relationship, how awkward and weird that would be.
Yeah.
But what about in Roman times, if you really were very heterosexual, but like the pressure, the normal thing was a much more fluid world.
Yeah.
How weird would that be? You're just like having, you know what I mean? You're just like, do I have to also take a male lover? Like, just so people don't think I'm weird? Like, that would be so uncomfortable.
And I'm sure, were they probably having like, it was much more open too, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I imagine the town fountain. There's just 9 naked people in there.
I do think orgies were more common. Although from what I understand, their version of like male on male relationship, like penetration was considered like more feminine. And so it was like a weird thing involving the thighs. Like we're getting further afield than we need to get, but like it's even our understanding of like what like male on male sexuality was different.
It wasn't just penetration based.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although there's some like super sexually explicit Roman, like even our understanding of that is so like obviously like just random texts from like Greece and Rome did not survive. They had to be like copied by hand over and over and over again. And we get like the 5,000th facsimile of something that somebody wrote, right? And it was mostly in monasteries that they would do this. That like this was sort of their meditative exercise. Would like someone would give them some old document that they found in Pompeii or whatever, and then the monk would have to write it by hand like hundreds of times. But you can imagine if they're reading some super erotic gay poem from Sallust or whatever, there's some censoring happening, or just like who knows what they had. They were just like, no, right. Straight in the fire.
They go, and the moist thighs.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Rubbed together till a flame ignited.
Probably even worse than that. Yes.
Yeah. I imagine these are the guys that are in trouble. That's like detention for them. They go, you're going to rewrite the erotica.
Or just the one of the priests is like, he's really into those.
They go, and that's Carl's room. And that's where that comes out of.
All right. So back on topic. When I saw you, I was running.
Okay.
Right? And you used to be a runner. Do you still run?
No, hate it.
Okay. I hated running in cross country also, which I did all 4 years of high school. My parents said, you have to do a sport.
Yep.
And I went to the first high school football like meeting, and the coach was like, everyone get the fuck out, and I was like, nope, not for me, not going to do that. So I ran cross country, and I hated it then. Now I love it. But you just still hate it.
Hate it. I love sprints.
Oh.
Do sprints, mostly on the treadmill. But no, I hate it.
You just crank it way up?
Yeah, I do. I'm weird. I do 15 of 33 seconds on, 20 seconds
like
off.
An interval workout.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do 10 at 11.5.
Ooh.
And then I go 11.8, 12, 12.2, 12.5, 12.8.
Have you ever fallen off?
I haven't. I've gotten by the end I get really close. I know I don't know. I don't know what it is in my body. I don't feel satisfied with a work. I love working out, but I can't leave the gym or whatever workout feeling like it was just a waste of 30 minutes. Like I have to be
You have to be like,
dying.
You have to really feel it.
Yes.
Have you ever done one of those treadmills that's like human powered? Do you know those?
Oh yeah, the ones with the kind of the arc.
Yeah,
right.
You're making it turn like a hamster kind of.
I like those too. Those make me feel like I'm about to fall off all the time, though. Yeah. Oh, I like one that's forcing me to just go as fast as I can.
But you don't like sprinting on the ground, only on a treadmill?
I like it on a treadmill only. Yeah,
but I imagine most of the time you're on like janky hotel treadmills that like don't feel safe more than like a 6.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes. I love lifting weights.
Okay.
This is so weird, but my Instagram Explore page is just mostly form, people teaching proper form.
Yeah, sure.
And then Beyonce, and then raccoons and dogs. So that's it. And then domesticated raccoons. But I get really distracted, and running just feels so repetitive, and there's nothing to like keep me I get so bored with it.
Speaking of raccoons, you know Whitney Cummings?
Yeah.
Did you watch her story a couple months ago where she's like, look at this raccoon, and it's like all this stuff, and then it's like, I'm in the hospital getting a rabies shot. She got bit by said raccoon.
Oh my God, that's It's so good. I'm obsessed with these little guys. I'm obsessed with the people that have domesticated them and their little hands and everything. And then for every one of those stories, I love to read comments. I don't know why. Reading comments on Instagram is my favorite thing. And there's just always the second one down is someone going, a raccoon killed my pet cat. A raccoon killed my new kitten. And I have to remind myself that these are not sweet angels.
I'll show you a video. We caught like 5 raccoons 5 days in a row in our backyard. The other a couple months ago, they were like eating dog food, so we like catch them and then drive them down the road, drop them off.
And they keep coming back.
They keep coming back.
Man, but aren't they
every
cute?
Single one. Yes.
Were they like, or they?
Well, yeah. Then it's like you have this. You're holding this cage with just a feral, very angry raccoon in it.
I have this idea of them that they're just the sweetest little things, and one day I'm going to put my hand up to one, and its little paw is going to put its paw up right to my hand, and we're going to fall in love. And I know they're feral creatures.
Well, raccoons like to dip what they're eating like in water. So have you seen them when they eat cotton candy?
Yes. I get tagged in a lot of these now. So I've made it very well known that I'm obsessed with raccoons. Yeah. Horses was a thing for a while. Now it's back to raccoons. Yes, but whenever they have like the cotton candy or the gauze or something, whenever it disappears, and then their little hands are going frantic looking for it after it dissolves.
That's the best.
Yeah.
High school cross country was insane in retrospect because they would be like, okay, 14-year-old boys, go for a 50-minute run and come back. Like no one is we would just go to my friend's house and play video games or go throw rocks at things.
Yes.
Like the amount of trouble that we got in was insane. And that my parents thought this was better than me being at home, in retrospect, makes no sense.
Yeah, or not even going to a friend's house, but like they'd go run trails. You're just running into the woods and hanging out with high school kids. You know what you're going to do in the woods.
Yeah.
Or whatever else. And was yours uncut?
What do you mean? Oh, like you couldn't get cut from the team? Yeah. So there's a bunch of people that like can't run at all.
Yeah. I love to call them the shufflers.
Yeah.
Where they just, and they just shuffle into the woods.
We would go to the grocery store and get food. Like, and we'd come back with a sheet cake and we would just eat it. You know, it was just not. I think if I try to explain it, I can't imagine it's as unsupervised now as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because like everything's more supervised. But that is one of the things where it's like, you know, when people would describe their childhood and you're like, what? Like your parents are like, we didn't have car seats.
Yeah.
This seems like that. I was like, what are you doing? Like, and it just encouraged like the worst tendencies. Because we were like, I think they thought it was instilling discipline. And for us, it was like, no, when adults are not watching, you can break all the rules.
I've been given a 50-minute playtime.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then my favorite was when I always called I was the helper horse. We grew up in Kentucky.
Oh, to pace people?
What I would do is, for whatever, I was friends with the girls that were really good though, the ones that really cared, because there's only 7 that could run in the varsity race, and everybody else, and then there's 200 other girls that can't. And I would call myself. So when you go to a race, have you ever been to a racetrack? Watch race horses. You know they had the horses that walk the other horse to the gate.
Yeah.
That was
sometimes it's a goat, like a comfort animal.
I've never seen a goat walk a horse.
Oh, not to the thing, but they'll have it like in the stable. Like they don't like to be alone. Yeah, there's like comfort goats.
Oh, that's adorable. Yeah. That was all my coach saw me was, which is fine.
Yeah, sure.
Was just walking my friend that was on the varsity team to the front of the line. And then he'd be like, all right, you do whatever you want. I don't care. And all he really cared about were those 7 really fast girls. And then because I talk about my stand-up. I fake passed out a lot because I was like, what? I hate this. I'm over this. I didn't want to disappoint my mom and just quit running. So I would instead fake pass out. And my coach never believed me. Like people would rush over and be like, "Oh, Hunter, are you okay?"
You just sort of stagger a little bit and then go down.
So bad. The joke really was in my stand-up. I'm like, and then on your way down, you grab a girl's hair for witness.
Yes.
Because I learned I couldn't like pass out in one of those areas where there wasn't a lot of fans or people around. Because one time I did that.
Swarm you.
And then I just laid there for like 20 minutes, fake passed out, and then had to get up, crawl a little bit further, and then fake pass out again. So you have to wait until you're in a popular area to fake pass out so the moms are worried about you. But my coach never believed it. He would look at me, roll his eyes, and keep it moving.
There was the kids who were really good at it, who really tried, and then there was like everyone else who's just sort of dicking around. And I always, like, now I'm really into it. I run almost every day, and I push myself, and I like it, and I regret that I wasn't serious. Really? And I remember I was talking to this friend of mine who's on the team, and I was like, I wish one of the coaches had just taken me aside and like, I'm like, why are you afraid of trying? Like, you should really really commit. You should have called me out. And then, who knows what would have happened. And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? They said that to you like literally every day. They were like, you were like, I had told myself that I was like this reachable kid that just no one reached, and it was, or that no one thought to reach out to. And in fact, they were just constantly reaching out. I was just so,
you weren't even taking it in. It was like the womp teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a hard sport to really, unless you want it, it's a hard sport for
well, that's
you
the
to
thing.
get
It's
into.
ultimately about that you want it, right? And to be like, now I'm sure in your career, like, no one's like, how are you doing? You're totally self-motivated. You have to do it. And to have that when you're 14, and like the playing field's not level because different people have different types of parents, different genetics. To be that at 14, 15, 16, 17, even 18 is like, that's not not normal.
Not normal. And like cross country too is so, it's like, there's not a lot of variation in how to be good. You're just a fast runner. Like, there's a lot of other sports that you could be football, there's how many different, there's 11 players on the field.
There's like specialization.
Right. Yeah. And you can be a great kicker. You can be a great running back, blah, 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 blah. I love sports. But like basketball even, you know what I mean? Like you could be a forward. You could be a guard. Those are the same thing, I think. But just running real good for 3 miles is all. It's just, I do think people that are like running and are still runners now, like yourself, are the superhumans with a good noggin on you. Because for you to like sit there and tell yourself to keep running, you're probably pretty healthy inside.
Well, I mean, so is weightlifting, so is sprinting. Whatever you do, you ultimately just realize you have to be self-motivated for it.
Yes. Yeah.
Although, because cross country was no cut at ours, there was a couple kids who were like handicapped, so we had like mentally disabled kid on the team. And I remember one time he would always start like really fast because he didn't like totally understand how it worked. And I'm sure everyone was super mean to him, although I remember him being super nice. But I remember one race he like sort of came out of the gate like super hot, like running.
Yeah.
And then he went the wrong way, and everyone followed him. Except for like, the whole front pack followed him. So everyone went the wrong way. The whole race had to start over. And I think about it all the time.
No, that's a game. That's a mental game. You get survival of the fittest. You look at the cones. That's so funny.
They're just looking at the person in front of them and they have no idea. It was nuts.
That would be so fun because then the middle of the pack actually wins the race.
That's what happened.
That's so funny. I love that. That's hilarious.
And the purity of it too, because he like won, or was like way ahead, and then suddenly like the race, it's like what was supposed to be 3 miles later. You're supposed to come on the finish line, but he's in there like 5 minutes in because he cut the whole thing off.
It's like Rudy scores the touchdown, but they're like
but
play
he's going
was
the
never
wrong way.
That's so funny. I would have let that play out. It's so good. Yeah. I would love, that's a show I would watch on TV, is a high school uncut cross-country team. And all the different
I've never
characters.
Really seen, that's not a sport that gets rendered in film and TV very much.
It's really boring.
Yeah.
The actual sport in itself is pretty boring. But people that can do it are superhumans.
Okay, so there was a Stoic. His name was Chrysippus, and he's supposedly one of the only people to ever die of laughter. Do you believe that's possible?
I think Chrysippus.
Chrysippus.
I think Chrysippus had a heart attack or was doing whatever synthetic drug was around then, and had a good old laugh that tipped it off.
You've never laughed so hard you thought you could die?
No.
The joke partly survives to us. So apparently he was like sitting on his front porch, and a donkey walks up and he starts eating out of the garden. And the person, rushes up to get their donkey, and he says, does your donkey want some wine to wash down those figs? And then he starts laughing at his own joke, and he laughs so hard that he keels over and dies. So it's kind of the ultimate, like, you had to be there because it makes no sense.
Okay, Chrysippus, I know what happened.
Okay.
Because that joke is bad.
Yes.
That's not.
He died of embarrassment?
That's not a joke, is what that is. First of all, let me tell you what's happening in Chrysippus' life.
Okay.
Everything is shit.
Okay.
Everything is so. But this is actually my favorite emotion, though.
Okay.
Everything in his life has just exploded and then crumbled to rubble.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that moment, do you know, when everything seems like it's just the worst, and you have that realization that I'm just gonna sit here and just there's nothing to be done anymore. It's all rubble,
mm-hmm.
and you're sitting in just the grief of it all, and then something silly happens, and it like takes. It's like when you laugh after crying a ton, or you're sitting in your house that's been destroyed by a tornado, and something silly happens and everyone laughs. Or when you're laughing in the hospital room after somebody's just died.
Or like all this terrible stuff has happened, and then one more terrible thing happens, and you just start laughing maniacally at the absurdity of it.
That's exactly what happened to him, and it was just the dumbest thing. Somebody maybe right before that had choked on somebody he loved choked on wine and died, and he goes, "You want some wine with that fig?" and died from all the major emotions hitting him at once. I think that's what happened, because that's really bad joke.
It's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought of that theory.
But it is my favorite emotion, is laughter in the midst of despair.
Yes. Where and actually there's a thing from Seneca where he's talking about like life is terrible. He basically says life is terrible.
Yeah.
You can cry about it or you can laugh at it.
Yeah.
Like take your pick.
Yeah. It is pretty beautiful and cruel all the time.
Yes.
Like the raccoon.
Well, if you take it personally, it sucks.
Yeah.
If you're just like, all right.
It's nature.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm part of nature.
I do think it's funny because Stoicism has this reputation as being very humorless, mm-hmm. or very serious, or being without emotion. And then have one of the original dudes literally die of laughter. I like that.
Oh, yeah. But I think, yeah. I mean, I don't think he was laughing at it because he thought it was the funniest joke in the entire world. Unless I'm
Sometimes
missing.
You just can't stop yourself.
True.
So, like, do you know Pete Holmes?
Yes, I love Pete Holmes.
On his podcast, he has this question. He goes, "Can you remember the time you laughed the hardest?" And it's never usually the funniest thing. It's usually something really dumb or weird, or drugs are involved, as you said. But it's not normally like, and now I'm going to tell you the funniest story of all time.
Yeah.
And you're going to see why I was laughing so hard.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always you had to be there.
Yeah, it's always you had to be there. Yeah. So I'm wondering if maybe there was something that would make sense if you were there.
Very much. It was the tip of the pyramid of despair for him.
That is an interesting take on it, which I would not have thought of, that maybe only a comedian would pick up on, which is that, there's some level of despair or pain or anguish that would explain the enormity of the laughter. Like normal circumstances, you chuckle.
Yeah,
yes.
But that's my favorite kind of comedy. Is I love storytelling, but the story. One of my favorite comics, Tig Notaro,
mm-hmm.
and she's my top. But most of her stories are just the most embarrassing, ridiculous moments of her life.
The Jeopardy one is amazing.
Yes,
where she blew it on Jeopardy. I don't even remember what her guess was, but it's so bad.
It's so obvious.
On national television.
Yeah. It's so good. That is her.
No, Wheel of Fortune, right?
Yeah. It was Wheel of Fortune. But I know the moment. Oh man, and she's so good at sitting in the moment and just letting people kind of sit in the awkwardness with her that you just can't help yourself but like erupt in laughter because it is kind of uncomfortable and you feel the embarrassment and whatever. And I think that is the best comedy because everybody feels it humanizes everything.
Yes.
You're like kind of you're not like degrading somebody or anything else. You're just bringing somebody into a very embarrassing moment or you can be a dark moment and then through it all you kind of give up and then there's always like I don't know there's that little moment of laughter at the end that's just Bill Burr's great at it. Where he's trying so hard to be a good person but he was born with all these angry demons inside.
Well, his childhood was fucking horrible.
Right. And he's got a kid and he's trying to be good for the kid and the moment when he's fighting with the toaster in the kitchen and it's just I think the funniest moments in those moments of pure laughter and enjoyment come from a dark place before.
Yes. There's a joke in Meditations. It's not very funny, but Marcus is
it as good as the fig one?
It's almost as bad. He's talking about this person who's so rich and has so much stuff that they have no place to shit, like that their house is so full of stuff.
Like I can't. I shit on gold wherever I'm at. I'm gonna shit on gold.
It's like the joke doesn't totally make sense, but you get that he's making fun of someone. And you're like, okay, like even in your diary, you're joking around. Like I like that. You're not like this, because I think we think of the philosopher as being an inherently not fun person, which is sad. Because actually, I think what being really smart should do is allow you to poke fun at the absurdity of the world and see the contradictions. Like even he has this thing about posthumous fame that I think is funny. He goes like, people who long for posthumous fame forget that people in the future will be just as stupid and annoying as the people who are alive right now.
Yes.
I'm like, that's a little bit. Like that's a funny joke.
Yeah. And I think
it's also true.
Right.
And sad.
I think a lot of humor is letting go of perfectionism and ego
and one's illusions.
Yes, yeah, and realizing like that it is kind of all. I mean, everybody's gonna die.
Yeah,
and it's always there's an expiration date, and so it's like take seriously that everything isn't so serious.
Yes.
Because it's going to end. Everything's going to end.
Yeah, he says in Meditations, he goes, remember that Alexander the Great is buried next to his mule driver. They're both in the same ground and the same thing happened to both. You're like, that's both, obviously there's a more serious way to make that same point. So I think he's choosing to be absurd and ridiculous.
That's really funny.
But it's really funny. That. Yeah.
I love it. I sometimes like, all right, I have an obsession with Beyonce. And I just think she's just so artistically smart and like, you're like, how are we made up of the same beings? And then I go, no matter who, like two people are next to each other, I always say, it's like, we're both going to die. That's the thing you have in
the
common
end,
with somebody.
Destiny's Child, they're all equal.
Right. That's so good. That's such a good point. That's so, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a very dark outlook, but also kind of freeing.
Yeah, it should be freeing. I mean, there's Juvenile, who's this Roman
rapper.
Poet. Yes.
Juvenile.
That's Juvenile. I don't know how to pronounce any of the names. I didn't learn them in school, so I'm just like, whatever popped in my head is usually how I say it. But he was talking about Alexander the Great, and he says, the whole world was not enough for Alexander, but in the end, a coffin was sufficient.
That's again, so good. Yes, these are great. Yeah. I love these. These are very funny jokes. Yeah, I mean it's true too. It's like I think I just when I started comedy, it was like 8 months after my mom died when I was 22 years old.
That's kind of what pushed you to do it, right?
Yeah, but I always say one of the greatest my mom was a great mom, and I learned a lot from her. One of the greatest gifts she gave me, though, was dying at an early age for me, because it kind of gave me this outlook in life, like, well, shit. I mean, it can all go to shit whenever, and I mean that in the most freeing way. That I just was like, okay, I'm gonna work hard, but I'm gonna work hard at the stuff I want to work hard at, and not what I think I should be doing. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I enjoy doing.
She gave you a sense of the shortness of life.
Yes.
As opposed to, people get really old, they have lots of time.
Yeah.
They can always get to it later.
Right.
That's not really true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like it's I'm like so weirdly grateful for it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, that's the best thing you could take out of it, right?
Very much.
Better than being tortured by it.
Yeah, and then one of my first like bits that ever really popped off when I first started comedy was about I'm not even that dark now, but it was a bit about I was her only daughter, so I had to pick out her coffin outfit, and we were the same size though, so I couldn't part with anything that was cute, and I asked when I would get it back. And
you have a Botox one about her too. That's
funny. Yeah.
You see your mom everywhere,
right? Yes, and that's very true. Yeah. I know. I can't believe they let me do that on national television.
Was that scary? Was that? That's probably the biggest stage you've been on, right?
Yeah, very much. I was laughing the entire time because I was like, these people have not figured out that I don't belong here, and I have just keep falling deeper down these cracks, and I've somehow ended up on Jimmy Fallon's stage. And when are they going to figure it out? I don't know. Hopefully they post it.
And the Tonight Show is sort of like, I mean, it's a little different than it was 30 years ago, but that is like the biggest thing that a comedian can do. And you did it pretty early.
Yeah.
That must be sort of like, well, I did everything you can do, but I still want to keep doing it.
Oh, yeah. So there's a million things I want to do now. But yeah, it was, I had to learn, I had a lot of imposter syndrome, but then I had to go, because the way it happened was super fast, right? I just had videos go viral. I ended up with a manager, and then these kind of a lot of stars aligned, and I ended up on Fallon. But then I had to go, no, you worked your butt off for 8 years before that, where you might have skipped a couple steps professionally to get to the Fallon point, but like you were there because you were ready. Because you did the background.
But I actually think that's a harder journey because you get the thing, and instead of having that like carrot that you're working towards, that you got it earlier. And in my career, some things like that happened. So then it was like, okay, now how do I not fuck it up? Mm-hmm. And then how do I prove to be the exception to the rule, which is that people fuck it up? Like you don't get it early because it's bad for you.
Yeah.
So how can I prove that actually no, like I deserved it and I'm going to be worthy of it? To me, that's like that's the harder, rarer journey.
Yeah. I mean, I had to learn a lot of that stuff backwards, where I got Fallon, and then I was still in Atlanta, and like I wasn't a touring headliner until right after Fallon. I mean, 2 weeks after Fallon hit the road, and it kind of hasn't stopped since then, but it was, I hadn't been doing an hour on the road to people who are buying tickets to see me because they've seen all my stuff online, and now I got to write new stuff.
Yeah, right. You can't have the anonymity of being just another person working on their stuff.
Right.
Suddenly
correct.
you had to perform at a level and with a consistency that is more demanding.
Worth buying a ticket to see in Boca Raton, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was terrifying at first. And I think I think you just I just put my head down and I go, okay, first thing I'm going to do is learn the new hour, learn how to write the new hour, this. And then, because there were so many things. How do you sell tickets? How do you push tickets? And if I was like, why aren't you an expert in all 5 things at one time? Then I would just start beating myself up, and I had to compartmentalize,
yes,
and take one task at a time.
Yes,
and but it is what I meant by like going back and going, no, yeah, I did the work, I deserve to be here. I had to keep saying that to myself because I think you do start to hear the people talk.
Sure.
And then you kind of just have to know what I don't know. I think you have to have the confidence in yourself and the confidence in the work that you've done and know what you're doing right now.
Do you know the Marcus Aurelius story about imposter syndrome?
Mm-mm.
So Marcus Aurelius isn't born to like the royal family. He's just like this regular kid. He comes from a aristocratic, like wealthy family, but he's just like this kid. And the Emperor Hadrian doesn't have a son. And so he meets Marcus when he's like a child, and everyone sort of senses there's something special about this kid. But like the worst thing in the world for a young person is to be like told you're going to be king. Like look at Prince Charles, right? It fucks with you. So Hadrian adopts this older man, Antoninus Pius, who's in his 50s, on the condition that Antoninus Pius adopts Marcus Aurelius. So he sets in like not just who's going to succeed him, but who's going to be next after that person. Yeah. And so when Marcus, who's then like maybe a teenager, is like told like someday you're going to be king, he supposedly like breaks down in tears. That he's sort of weeping over all the bad kings in history. He's weeping over the fact that his like normal life has just been obliterated, and he's like not sure he can do it. And then many years later, when he's told like, okay, it's actually going to happen now, that night he dreams that he has shoulders of ivory. And the idea, the message or the omen in this is what the Romans believe, was that the shoulders of ivory was like God or whomever telling him that he was strong enough to bear the weight of the burden that he was going to have. And so I kind of think about this idea of like, you don't think you have what it takes. You don't think you're strong enough to do the thing, but you are. And actually the fact that you're having those doubts, like the problem with most leaders or kings is that they believe inherently that they are worth it and deserve it and it will be easy and they're special and better than everyone else. And it's actually the fact that you are doubting it that's like proof that you're not beyond redemption and that you will do the work and you are worthy of it. Yes, exactly. That you have to earn it as opposed to it's what you deserve.
Very much. Yeah. I so agree with that. And I think what I learned too is it is almost that it's like the Lord of the Rings thing where the power you get the taste all of a sudden of how good it feels. Being from somebody who didn't have it, you know what I mean? Yes. Worked really hard at it and it was hard for a long time and all of a sudden you get the taste and it feels really good. I appreciated having 8 years of nannying 10 hours a day and then going to the open mic the night before and stuff because you really, really do appreciate it and it feels so good when you finally have it that you're going to work your ass off so you never have to go back to nannying again. You don't want to lose it because you know how hard it is on the other side.
When it is absurd, it's like, oh, it suddenly happened. I got it sooner. And it's like, no, actually like literally years of work went into this moment.
Very much.
Which no one sees or everyone discounts. Like my first book came out when I was 25, which was absurd, but I'd literally been writing every day online since I was 18.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years.
For sure.
And so like that's an extremely long time. I mean, I'm much better now than I was then, and I wish maybe it had come later, but like everyone thinks it just happened for you and or we want to think that it just happens for people. And maybe it does algorithmically for a few random people who are the first on this platform or that platform. But 99% of people who have it, like, it was an incredible amount of work. And this is, I would even include the Nepo babies. There was still a lot of shit that everyone eats a lot of shit.
Very much. Oh, for sure. And the only true test is what if they can continue it.
Yes. If they can
live
not
up
fuck
to
it up.
Yes. Yeah, very much. Yeah. And that is, I think, the algorithm can push somebody, blah, 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 and you can catch heat, which is fine, but can you keep the fire going? And
or can you do it more than one time?
Very much. Yes. Yeah. And that takes a lot of determination and effort and continue because the flame's going to go out sometimes. It's always an up and down thing. Can you keep your wits about you when it's someone else's turn to shine bright and you fall off for a minute?
Also, a lot of quantity, right? It's like you put one thing out and it blows up great, but like you may have to put up 1,000 more things to get the next one. Yeah. It's not going to be number 7 that blows up again, unless you're like, the greatest of all time or something.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. I'm learning that I'm trying to build my new hour right now and I don't want to put it on the internet. So I'm putting all these like local riffs up or crowd work, and it's kind of soul crushing because you're like, oh, this is what everyone's doing. But it's a way to keep engagement without burning.
I think you need more long, like all your stuff that I saw on YouTube, for instance, it's all shorts and you don't have like anything over longer than like 3 minutes. For some reason. I've
got 10 more minutes that I want to fine tune, and then I'm going to be ready to put this hour out.
Oh, interesting.
And then for me, it's right now, it's just the, it's impatient. I want to put something out, but I go, if you can just hold on to the cliff.
All right. Well, I'll hold on. I can't wait.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course.